breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Good morning from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2 is Rob Donaldson. He does a great job with his show, the Rob's Best Bets show, over on youtube.com/his name, Rob Donaldson. We're going to be taking a look at some of the edges that he's going to try to unearth towards the beginning part of the season, just how he takes a look at baseball early on the season. Does he use a lot of the 2023 numbers? Do we bank on some bounce backs for guys that had a little bit of a rough year last year? And we're going to be taking a look at a whole lot of games that we've got for this Saturday, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every one of these Saturday games, all 15 of them, as we touch them all. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you, for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions. I think that more and more are going to come as we get down to the bitter end of college basketball, especially once the Final Four starts up and you've got those buffer days. So I'm here for you guys whenever you've got a question, but let's take a look back at everything that we saw on a solid baseball Friday. Tried to find some trends and tried to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
I think it's pretty much confirmed that the Colorado Rockies are going to suck this year. 7-3, the Arizona Diamondbacks take them down. Another rough start for a Colorado Rockies starter. Cal Quantrill was such a good money-making pitcher for you with the Cleveland Guardians. 5 runs surrendered in 5 innings, including a pair of home runs. Going deep for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Christian Walker is first of the campaign, and Lourdes Gurriel already up to 2 home runs this season, while Alek Thomas, a little bit later on, is able to go deep off of Jake Bird, who got the Bird for his first home run of the campaign. For Bird, gives up 2 runs in 2 innings, and Tyler Kinley, he won an inning. He was able to go scoreless there, and you were able to get a home run off the bat of one Elias Diaz, his first of the campaign for the Colorado Rockies. That does come off of Merrill Kelly, and that was really the lone mistake he made. He gave up that home run in 6 2/3 innings. Joe Mantiply does give up 2 runs in an inning. It's been rough for him the last about 24 or so months, but Kevin Ginkel, a scoreless inning. Ryan Thompson was able to give you an out of the bullpen as well. Yankees are going to win this series over the Houston Astros, it appears. They're at the very least going to get a split here as they take them down by a count of 7-1 on the road. Carlos Rodon, not necessarily long for this game, but he limited damage, giving up 1 run in 4 1/3 innings, and this is a good Yankees bullpen, and they were able to supply the boom in this one. Luke Weaver was able to combine with Nick Burdi for 2 scoreless innings. You were able to get the 2 Dodgers, Victor Gonzalez, along with Caleb Ferguson, to combine for 1 2/3 innings scoreless, and then Clayton Beeter was able to give you a scoreless inning, as well as Giancarlo Stanton in the 9th inning. Got his first home run of the season off of Brandon Belock. As for Christian Javier, he had his issues all year last year. He actually looked really good in this start. He goes 6 scoreless innings, and then from there, my goodness, this Houston Astros bullpen was not great. Parker Molshinsky gives up 4 runs, only 2 of which were earned. He was hurt by his own throwing error, which I still contend if you're a pitcher and you create an error that causes you to give up runs, those should be stuck to you, but that's a discussion for another podcast on another day. Rafael Montero, he got a pair of outs out of the bullpen. Taylor Scott, though, he gives up 2 runs in 1/3 of an inning, and then it was Belock who gave up that solo run to Giancarlo Stanton in 1 2/3 innings. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they're off to a nice 2-0 start. They take down the Miami Marlins by a count of 7-2 as Martin Perez, not necessarily sharp in this game. He goes 4 1/3 innings. He allows 9 base runners, 3 walks, 6 hits allowed, but they were able to weasel their way out with him, giving up just 1 run. Josh Fleming, the former Tampa Bay Ray, 3 innings of 1-run baseball to be able to get a save, and then you were able to get 5 outs out of the bullpen, scoreless out of Ryder Ryan, who picked up the win in this one for the Pittsburgh Pirates. No home runs. They just went 3 of 12 with men in scoring position, so a lot of station-to-station baseball as A.J. Puck just was not long for this game. 6 walks, 4 runs allowed in 2 innings. He transitioned to starter. Not going so great right now. It's Brian Owing. He goes 4 innings in long relief, gives up 1 run, actually an admirable performance. Birch Smith, he was able to come in for 2 innings, gave up 2 runs, and George Fioriano, scoreless inning out there. And For the Miami Marlins, they actually go 3 of 9 with men in scoring position and manage 2 runs because only the Miami Marlins are able to do that. We did see just 3 unders in baseball on Friday. This was one of them. The Seattle Mariners shut out the Boston Red Sox 1-0 the final as George Kirby looked tremendous in this one. He gives up no runs in 6 2/3 innings. From there, you've got Ryan Stanek, Gabe Spire combining for a scoreless innings, and then Andres Munoz, he strikes out 3, gets the final 4 outs, scoreless, and the lone run of this game. J.P. Crawford takes Nick Pivetta for a ride, his first of the campaign, as Nick Pivetta, talk about a tough luck loser, 10 strikeouts, gives up that home run in 6 innings. Josh Winkowski from there, 2 scoreless, and the Boston Red Sox gave him absolutely no run support whatsoever. The Oakland A's picking up right where they left off last season, stinking. 6-4, the Cleveland Guardians are able to get it done. Not necessarily the sharpest start for Logan Allen. 3 runs surrendered in 5 innings, including a pair of home runs. You expect to do a little bit better against Oakland as it was J.D. Davis who got his first 2 home runs as an Oakland A. Perhaps he's going to be able to return to form, and Ross Stripling is back in the form of stinking. 5 runs, 4 of which were earned, give it up in 5 innings, including a home run to Jose Ramirez, his first of the campaign. His bullpen from there was not bad, as you did have a scoreless inning of the bullpen from Austin Adams, and then 3 innings out of Mitch Spence. His MLB debut, he gives up just 1 run, and for the Cleveland Guardians, this is a pretty nasty bullpen. Scott Barlow does give up a run in an inning, but Hunter Gaddis, Eli Morgan, Emmanuel Clase, they all supply a scoreless inning, so if you took the Guardians run line, you're able to get there. If you took the Dodgers run line, you get there as well. 6-3, they take down the St. Louis Cardinals, as the Cardinals do put up a 3 spot in the 8th inning to be able to cash you the over, as Zach Thompson just got destroyed. We're going to see this a lot from the LA Dodgers, just being able to light these pitchers ablaze. 5 runs surrendered in 5 1/3 innings. For the 3 home runs for the LA Dodgers, you had Mookie Betts be able to take one for a ride, his third of the campaign. You had Teoscar Hernandez go twice off of Thompson deep, his first and second of the campaign. And then you had one Miguel Rojas go deep a little bit later on off of Giovanni Gallegos, his first for Gallegos. 1 2/3 innings allowed that solo home run. Jojo Romero, a scoreless inning. And for the LA Dodgers, very rock solid start here from Bobby Miller. 6 scoreless innings, 11 punch outs. He's a fringe Cy Young candidate in my opinion. Michael Grove, he's the man that gave up those runs that help you out with the over. If you took the 8.5, 3 runs surrendered in an inning, but Ryan Brasier, Evan Phillips, they steady the ship from there. They both are able to give you a scoreless inning. My DK Network write-ups have started out 2-1. We started out 2-0 actually, but the New York Mets did not want to help us out on the money line. 3-1, the Milwaukee Brewers get it done. As for the Mets, they take a 1-0 lead off the bat of Starling Marte. The Marte Parte got going in the second inning. His first home run of the campaign that comes off of Freddie Peralta. That was the lone hit of the game for the New York Mets. Good grief, as Freddie Peralta allows that home run, but settled in from there, giving up just 1 run in 6 innings. From there, you have Joel Payamps, Abner Uribe, Trevor McGill all supply a scoreless inning. And for the Brewers, Christian Yelich, have yourself a day. 3 of 4 with a home run. His first of the campaign comes off of Jose Quintana. Did not look sharp in this game. Gives up 6 hits. That home run, 2 runs in total over the course of 4 2/3 innings. You did have Jorge Lopez give up a run in an inning, but Michael Tonkin, I actually like him as a long reliever. 2 scoreless innings, and Drew Smith 4 outside the bullpen scoreless. But Mets absolutely nothing doing on offense. And for the Atlanta Braves, through the first about 6 or so innings, there was nothing doing, but then they put up that 7th spot in the 8th inning, because that's what the Atlanta Braves do. They take down the Philadelphia Phillies by a count of 9-3. Spencer Strider, he gets a no decision, giving up 2 runs in 5 innings, including a home run going deep for the Phils. You have Brandon Marsh get his first of the campaign, but this is a good Braves bullpen that locked it down from there. Aaron Bummer was a little bit of a bummer in his Braves debut. He gives up a run in an inning, but Pierce Johnson, Joey Benez, AJ Minter all supply a scoreless inning. And for the Atlanta Braves, they do this with getting no home runs. They just went 4-15 with men in scoring position. Orlando Arcia had a pair of extra base hits. Matt Olson had 3 doubles, by the way. And for the Philadelphia Phillies, Zach Wheeler has to feel let down. He goes 6 scoreless innings, and then the bullpen from there gave up 9 runs in 3 innings. As Matt Strahm gives up 2 runs in a third of an inning. Jeff Hoffman, pair of outside the bullpen scoreless, but Jose Alvarado was good towards the back half of last season. 5 runs surrendered in 2/3 of an inning. Connor Brogdon gives up 2 runs in a third of an inning before Junior Marte steadies his ship with a scoreless inning, but damage had already been done, and the Tampa Bay Rays did some damage to the Toronto Blue Jays. 8-2. They take down the Jays as Chris Bassett, he was taking hook, line, and sinker in this one. gives up 5 runs, 4 of which were earned over the course of 5 innings, including a home run to Brandon Lau, who was able to get his first home run of the campaign. From there, 3 innings out of Wes Parsons. The Wes Parsons experiment gave up 3 runs. That was not great to say the least. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, Aaron Savali was dealing. He does give up a home run, but gives up just 1 run over the course of 6 innings. George Springer has already got a pair of home runs on the campaign. That was number 2. And from there, Chris Davinsky, 2 scoreless innings. Jason Adam allows a run in an inning, but Tampa Bay had that game in hand from there. And then we did also see the San Francisco Giants be able to get the job done against the Slam Diego Padres. 8-3 the final for San Francisco. Matt Chapman, welcome to San Francisco. Home runs number 1 and 2 of the season. He takes Pedro Avila deep in the 9th inning and Joe Musgrove deep in the 1st. As Musgrove, we've seen this the last few years where he's gone off to slow starts. 4 runs surrendered in 5 2/3 innings. He was slammed out there in Seoul as well. And then from there, you have 2 runs given up in an inning from Steven Tulloch. You also had Anya de los Santos come in, 1 1/3 inning scoreless, but Pedro Avila gives up the 2 runs, including that home run in the 9th inning. And you had for the San Diego Padres 3 home runs. Problem was they were all solo home runs, as Fernando Tatis Jr. goes deep twice in this one, 1st and 2nd of the campaign, and Manny Machado gets home run number 2 of the season. Both Machado and Tatis Jr. take Kyle Harrison for a ride. He gives up the 2 solo home runs in 6 innings, and then the other home run comes off the hand of Tyler Rogers, who gave up a solo home run in an inning, but you had Ryan Walker along with Landon Rupp both provide a scoreless inning, and for the San Francisco Giants, they do go 5 of 11 with men in scoring position. So saw a lot of fun in baseball on Friday, and if you're looking at very early returns in baseball thus far this season, and this includes the Seoul series that we saw as well. 16 overs to 8 unders with 1 push thrown in there on total. So it has been quite overwhelming to begin the season. Favorites have been able to do a relatively okay job on the money line. 16-9, hitting at a 64% clip. So we are going to be tracking these trends all season long, and that's currently what we're getting in Major League Baseball, and that's what we all saw on Friday. Coming up next, let's talk with one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson. He does great work with the show/podcast, The Rob's Best Bets Show. We're going to be taking a look at a few games for Saturday, and I'm taking a look at the early portion of the baseball season. That is up next right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Your lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, as many of you recognize him from my college basketball podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops. It's Rob Donaldson joining me. He's an absolutely tremendous handicapper. You're able to find him on youtube.com/Rob Donaldson, doing the Rob's Best Bet Show, taking a look at college basketball when it's in season, all forms of football, along with this great game of baseball. And you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure for hopping on, Greg. And man, Major League Baseball is here. We got college basketball wrapping up. It's very fun to just kind of be a sports fan and always be engaged. But times like this where it crosses over between 2 sports is definitely just like one of the pinnacle times of the year for sure.
Oh, it is such a great time of year. And just coming into the baseball season, how much do you take a look at what we got from the previous year and try to translate it to this year? And how much do you try to look at some of these guys that maybe had a down year last year? Like I think Carlos Correa is a great example, and try to bank on a little bit of a bounce back, because I do think that that's one of the toughest things for baseball, and that there are a lot of guys that they have career years and they never recapture. And then you'll just find guys like Cody Bellinger last year. He had stunk it up for 2 years. All of a sudden he becomes good again last year. Just how do you try to be able to take a look at those sorts of guys? Or is it one of those things that you just allow to happen organically?
Yeah, certainly the latter, where it's going to organically happen. We know that. And sometimes, you want to key in on guys. One of the guys I'm actually trying to key in on this year is a player I've loved throughout his career, and that's Starling Marte. Well, hey, it's against the Brewers. He hit a home run, and
the lone hit of the game for the Mets.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he's obviously been a fantastic player all of his career and multiple stops. I would love for a guy like Starling Marte to rekindle that fire. And also, vice versa. There's a lot of guys who maybe on the pitching front or offensively had a really breakout, quote unquote, season, and they might fall off. I mean, even Julio Rodriguez last season in the early part, after his amazing 2022, really started off slow and was slumping. So these are things that on both sides of the spectrum are definitely going to be prevalent.
Yep, it certainly is going to be. And I mean, man, that was rough to say the least. And I do want to ask you right there, because I did a write-up on the Mets. I was expecting more than one hit from them on Friday. And the pitching wasn't bad. They gave up 3 runs to a Brewers team that I think is going to struggle on offense. But just how do you gauge these teams, the Mets and the Padres? I think that lumping them both in together is warranted in this case, as they were really 2 of the biggest disappointments we've seen in quite some time in baseball. And how do you take a look at them this year? Because I'm actually a little bit bullish on the Padres, but I take a look at this Mets team, and man, I just don't know what to think of them, especially with Luis Severino going on Saturday.
Yeah, when you're kind of looking at the Mets lineup and the Milwaukee Brewers lineup, the Mets kind of held pat. I mean, they really didn't add in a whole lot of outside talent in the free agent market. And part of that is because they've already spent, so much money on the lineup that they have in front of them. And on the Brewers side of things, they added in Jackson Chirino with a kind of a lockup sort of deal on a potential spark plug for the lineup. But outside of that, they were a very inconsistent offense last year, and they really didn't boost that up a whole lot. They added in Rhys Hopkins, who we'll see if he can rekindle that power that he had in Philly during a time, but who knows? And I think both these offenses really aren't doing a whole lot for me. And so when you are kind of looking at how these teams are going to run, they're going to run through their defense, they're going to run through their pitching, and for those reasons, like today, there's going to be a lot of great under spots, in my opinion.
Yep, I do think that those are going to be 2 under teams. And I want to get a little bit of a look at some teams that you think might be good for overs, as Rob Donaldson, who does a tremendous job handicapping the sport of baseball, is joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show. And I mean, obviously, they were an over team last year, but I look at the Texas Rangers. Total for them is going to be 9 on Saturday, with it being Cody Bradford going against Kyle Hendricks. And I know that a lot of people early on during the season, they don't want to be taking these higher totals over, which 9 is pretty much the highest total that we're seeing on the board. We're seeing that in Reds versus Astros as well. But how much do you take a look at this Rangers team and think we could see a lot of the same that we saw last season from them, in that their totals just continue to go over left and right?
I think right now we're seeing the Rangers kind of hit their prime years, kind of like the Astros had, those years strung along in a row where it just felt like they were untouchable offensively. And, when you're talking about this game in particular with Cody Bradford, this is a guy who has pretty wicked stuff, but is effectively a 2-pitch pitcher. On the other side, on the Cubs, their lineup, again, they were a team that held pat and almost lost some pieces, and they have a lot of young guys that they're trying to infuse into this lineup. We'll see how good they are in terms of potentially making another playoff run this year. Again, I do like this over, because when you're talking about a guy in Cody Bradford who, yes, a lot of people are excited about him, but has a lot of work to do, I think the Cubs can jump on that, and vice versa. I think this Rangers team can score against anybody. So an aging pitcher in Kyle Hendricks, a young pitcher in Cody Bradford with not a lot of effective stuff at this time outside of 2 pitches, I think that's going to spell for an over here.
Yeah, I think so as well with the Professor Kyle Hendricks. He does a good job of being able to do soft contact, but against the Rangers, that might be a little bit more tough. And with Mr. Bradford out there on the mound for the Rangers, I don't think that he's going to hold down a Cubs lineup that they themselves were number 6 in the big leagues with regards to their offense last season in terms of runs per game. And I think that they're an interesting team to take a look at, because I'm not really too much of a futures player. I'm more of a game-to-game guy, but being someone from the great state of Wisconsin, obviously I pay attention quite a bit to the NL Central. I thought that the Cubs certainly were that team in the Central that I like coming into the season. With no disrespect to the Reds, I think that they're going to be solid as well, but I do like the Cubs coming into the season. In terms of just that front, what are you taking a look at, both in terms of the Central and perhaps a few features that you might be willing to take a look at as the season goes along / you play prior to the season?
The Cubs last year were a lineup that kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. I think a lot of them expected to be great, but the resurgence of Cody Bellinger really just kind of sprung that team to unprecedented heights. And when you are looking at a team who's sitting at the bottom of that division in terms of future value in the Pittsburgh Pirates, I mean, think about the lineup and the bats that they have that could potentially just be amazing this year. I mean, Henry Davis, you're a young guy who can potentially swing the bat at multiple different position spots. Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, Jack Sawinski, O'Neal Cruz is back. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this lineup that if they can maybe just find 2 more complementary pieces and figure out their rotation just a little bit more, this could be like the Orioles teams in the past 2 years where, it didn't feel like they had a whole lot with Jordan Lyles being trotted out there every night or every 5 days or 5 games, but they can score enough offense potentially to hang around, especially in the early season here, I think.
I think so as well, and I think that they are going to be a very fascinating team. And I feel like there's a lot of teams in both Central divisions that are sort of cut from the same cloth, because I do take a look at the AL Central, and I think that could potentially be the worst division in baseball, by the way. But you've got intriguing young teams like the Detroit Tigers, who they do feel like they're on a little bit of a come-up. Tyreek Skubal in his first start looked very good. They signed a few guys like Mark Cannon in the offseason that I do like. You've got a team in the Cleveland Guardians that has no offense whatsoever, but really good pitching. Just how do you take a look at that entire Central with the team in the Royals that there are some people are thinking that they're going to get a bit of a bump as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Royals, I think, are another great example of a team that offensively could really emerge. I think Bobby Witt, this could be a phenomenal breakout year for him. Obviously, they get Vinny Pasquantino back. They have MJ Melendez. Michael Garcia was a guy that was stinging the ball a lot last year, despite having been a smaller guy with a more frailish type of frame. He was surprisingly hitting the ball pretty hard, and that's a guy that could potentially explode for that lineup and be just an absolute game changer. Yes, they do have a kind of a makeshift style of rotation, but they have a lot of young guys, and they have some veterans that can at least win you maybe 50% of their starts, which is kind of what you're hoping for if you're a Royals team. And so when you're also looking at the Tigers, that's a division that could really flip on its head, with the Detroit Tigers and the Royals potentially being in the 2 or 3 slots or 1 in 3 slots. That's exciting.
Yep, it certainly is exciting, and I do think that the entire AL Central is going to be interesting to take a look at throughout the season, and I do think that we actually have a very fascinating game that is going to be going down on Saturday in terms of the Tigers and the Chicago White Sox, as Mike Soroka is looking to get a second lease on life out there in Chicago. I remember a few years ago, prior to all the injuries, he was looking like one of the up-and-coming pitchers in the big leagues. And then Kenta Maeda, a few years ago, was a top 5 Cy Young candidate before he's had his injury issues. Right now, we're finding the Tigers right around minus 135 to minus 142 on a total of 8. How do you evaluate this one? Because I do feel like this is one of those games where you need to handicap forward and think, all right, which of these guys in Maeda/Soroka is going to be able to return to form, if either of them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of unfortunate how Michael Soroka's career has turned out, because like you said, before the injuries, he was really trending up to really nice heights. And then it feels like the last 4 years, or 3 years at the very least, have just kind of been a blur of, did this guy really even play? And when we did see him play last season, it was bad. So it's an ultimate low risk, high upside signing for the White Sox. And I do think that it's going to be interesting to see how this season plays out for him. And Kenta Maeda on the other side is a pitcher with a lot of nasty stuff and a lot of great accolades under his belt. At the same time, he is a guy that gasses himself out pretty fast. And so when you are looking at 2 pitchers that we're talking about returning to form, this could potentially turn into a bullpen game where they're pushing their limits individually after 5 or 4 innings. That's going to open up a lot of potential run scoring. And so when you are looking at the lineups, I do think the Tigers are a little bit more favorable in that regard. And so I think the money line price, maybe a little bit too steep, but maybe -1, -1.5 is kind of where I would lay it here.
Yep, and how do you take a look at run lines in baseball? Because there are certain teams that I'm not going to be willing to lay one with. Like, for example, the Houston Astros the last few seasons. They've been a team that has won a lot of one-run games, even though they might be laying chalkier money lines. Oftentimes, I'll be a little bit more willing to lay the juice rather than lay a run and a half, just because I know I'm running a big risk with them. Meanwhile, I bring up this game, Dodgers versus Cardinals. The Dodgers are a team I'm very willing to lay a run line with, because with the low amount of one-run games that they've won the last few years, fewer than 20 in both of them, despite winning 100-plus games, it typically tells me that they're either going to lose outright or win by multiple runs. I'm not sure if you have the same philosophy with that regard, but I do think that playing run lines with teams, it should vary team to team, and being alert of how many one-run games a team plays, I think, should have a big impact on that.
Philosophically, we get to the same place, but with just a different viewpoint, because I kind of look through it through the lens of, what does a team's bullpen look like? And once we actually get into the months where we're running on, 30 games and 40 games, that's the time of year, I think, where bullpens start to get overused and overburnt. And so you can kind of pinpoint usage of, all right, who's going to be available on these given days? And can I feel comfortable with my run line holding that lead, that 2-run lead in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning? For a lot of these teams on the back end of their bullpen, you're looking at some just really bad talent. I would definitely be wary of doing that. And even the Astros, you brought up, their 1-run games last season. That's because their bullpen really just hit a weird stride. I mean, Presley was kind of on and off last season. A lot of the guys that they had relied on in years past sort of hit a lull. Rafael Montero comes to mind as well. So some of these past bullpens, we're going to see them really turn over because bullpen talent comes and goes in waves very, very quickly, and it's all about reloading year after year, and the teams that don't usually kind of get burnt by it.
Yep, and I'm so glad that you bring that up as well, because I do think that bullpen use is so big, and we were alluding to the LA Dodgers. They were one of the top bullpens in the big leagues, especially during the second half of the season last year as well, and I think that is so key to take a look at. And how much does that cause you to take a look at first fives rather than full games? Because I think that there's two philosophies with that. There are a lot of people that they'll look to avoid the bullpens altogether. For me, I do take a look at the bullpens, and it does cause me to be like, hey, even though a team might be down by like a run or two going into the seventh inning, I can bank on them getting into that bad bullpen, and it actually strengthens my full game evaluations. I like to fade those bad bullpens. How do you go about it? Because I do think that looking at the bullpen use is very important, and especially now this time of year in these first 2-3 starts for a guy, because these first 2-3 starts, you might be, even if you're trying to look first five, you might still have to work with the bullpen because these guys are on shorter pitch counts.
Yeah, and you also have openers that are at play that are only designed to go 1 or 2 innings out the gate as well. And so, yeah, you got to be really wary about picking your first 5 spots. But I do think there's a ton of value in that market because of the narrative we just kind of been talking about in terms of kind of avoiding these bad bullpens. And when you are looking at first 5 run lines or money lines, look at teams like the A's. I mean, they were horrible last season, but they kind of fell apart once their starter fell out of the game early in the season. They were actually winning a lot of the times through the first 4 or 5 innings, or at least keeping it within 1 run. And you can extract a ton of value from a lot of these bad teams, quote unquote, who are throwing out a guy who might be able to get them 4 innings of 2 earned ball or 5 innings of 3 earned ball, because a lineup can sort of contend with those amount of earned runs, but it's when those bullpens come in and immediately give up 4 runs in the 6th inning that it turns into a 9-3 game as opposed to a 3-3 or 3-4 type game.
Yeah, and there are some of those bad relief arms that you want to take a look at, like one that I've already realized for the Padres, Johnny Brito. When I see him come into a game, it's like, man, yeah, I don't know if I feel so good about my Padres position anymore. So there are some guys I still remember, Fernando Rodney, or as I called him back in the day, Fernando, oh no, Rodney. When he was in the game, I had to say, oh no, if I bet on the team that he was on as well. So I always had to do that. And Rob, when it comes to the slate that we've got for Saturday, all 30 teams are at last going to be in play. Is there a better 2 that you are looking to for the Saturday card?
Yeah, there's a number of them, and one of them is honestly going to be the Nationals on the money line against the Reds. I mean, you can even do +1 and get some plus value there as well, but Patrick Corbin is a guy that I think is worth mentioning because a lot of people look at, last year he had an ERA north of 5. He's a bad pitcher. And yes, I mean, in a certain context, that is pretty much true. At the same time, you look at his 32 starts, in 21 of those 32 starts, he allowed 3 or less earned runs over 5 innings pitched, and the team won 15 of his 32 starts. When you are looking at a horrible team like the Nationals, you're just kind of looking for the starting pitcher to give you an opportunity to win, and he was doing that 50% of the time for the most part, and that kind of speaks to a larger point of, yeah, Patrick Corbin is not going to have the upside of shutting down a lineup on the other side and giving you 7 or 8 with no earned runs. And he's also not going to be a high prop guy for strikeouts and those sorts of things either. But he's a guy that's always going to give your team a chance despite how bad he is on the surface numbers. And that's where you can extract a lot of value. I'm all over the Nationals and really just kind of on Patrick Corbin through at least the first couple months here to start the season.
The old turkey tosser himself. Sometimes you're able to get just such good value on perception. And the perception is everyone over there on social media, on X, they always try to load up being like, oh, Patrick Corbin is pitching today. Take the other team's first 5 over, take their run line and everything like that. And Patrick Corbin, if you bet on him every single start last season, you actually made money. I'm not saying that you got rich off of Patrick Corbin, but you did indeed make money. And a man that makes us a ton of money in so many different sports, that'd be Rob Donaldson. Rob, you do a tremendous job taking a look at so many different things. Football, college basketball, baseball, list goes on and on. So love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep. And as always, Greg, I really appreciate having me on. I can't wait to just dive in and talk baseball all summer long. It's one of my favorite sports. It's one of my old pastimes that I grew up with and just remember so fondly. And for those who want to follow my picks and the content I put out, you can do so on X at RobDFB, and you can also do so on YouTube, just my name, Rob Donaldson, for my videos as well. And really appreciate you having me on.
It is always great to have Rob aboard. He does such a tremendous job. Take a look at this great game of baseball that we all know and love. He's getting gassed up for the season, much like myself, and his time is always appreciated. Big thanks to Rob for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to get Rob Donaldson aboard. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bet Show. Every single time he joins this podcast, lends tremendous insights. You'll love him from my college basketball podcast. He does a great job on the baseball front as well, and every single time he joins me, regardless of the sport, he lends such good insight. So, big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this Baseball Saturday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, which is much cleaner than rotation order in college basketball. This is actually very well done by them. It goes National League games first in time order, American League games in time order, and then the Interleague games, those are all at the bottom. If you'd ever get like a rain out from the previous day, they would lump that in at the bottom as well, since the rotation is set a few days in advance, but it actually keeps things very clean and easy. So how about if we get things started with 901, 902 on the board. It is the New York Mets. They play us the Milwaukee Brewers. DL Hall is on the bump for the Brew Crew. Luis Severino is on the bump for the Mets, and the Mets are between minus 125 to minus 130 favorites. Between plus 110 to a plus 115, your number on the Brew Crew. 8 is the total, under is minus 115, the over is minus 105, and a little bit of a conflicting case here. I did set my line at a minus 133. I'm going to be willing to lay with the Mets now. Luis Severino was terrible last year, and I mean terrible. He had an ERA that was well north of 6. If you look at the numbers, he got a little bit unlucky. I'm not trying to say that he's going to have some sort of a breakout year and this guy is going to be an all-star or something like that, but you look at the numbers. He pitched a little bit better than what he deserved, and towards the back half of the season, he looked a little bit more respectable in spring training. I'm not saying that he was incredible or anything like that, but I know that the Mets were trying to fix his pitch tipping issues and things like that, and it looked to work during the spring. He still has some relatively good velocity. It's come and gone with him dealing with injuries, and I just have a tough time getting behind a guy in DL Hall who pitched 19 and a third innings all out of the bullpen last year for the Baltimore Orioles, being your starter for the Brewers. I have to think that DL Hall is going to be on a relatively tight pitch count. He's someone who's a little bit of an up-and-comer, but I've got my big-time question marks with DL Hall. Now, the bullpen advantage, that is certainly to the Milwaukee Brewers. Even with having the full Devin Williams, this bunch, you've got Ebner Uribe, who they had to utilize yesterday, but Bryce Wilson is someone that's able to give you a little bit of long relief. I think that they're going to be able to get quite a bit moving forward out of Jacob Junis, who you got to figure that he's going to be a spot starter / a guy that comes out of the bullpen, gives you good innings. Elvis Figueroa, Joel Payamps, these are guys that had a sub-3.5 ERA last season. And for the Mets, being able to get Edwin Diaz back in the fold is absolutely massive, as you've got a few solid setup guys like a Brooks Raley. I've always liked Adam Ottavino. Last season, he had about a 3.2 ERA as well, so I do think that the pitching in the back end is going to be relatively solid. The question is for the Brewers, are they going to be able to generate enough offense moving forward, as they had a nice 3-hit game from Christian Yelich. It looks like he's returning back to form. Had a bit of a renaissance last year. It wasn't back to MVP form, but you tell that it was a little bit better. The question becomes, these young guys, like, what are you going to be able to get moving forward out of someone like a Bryce Terang, Blake Perkins? These are the guys that are X factors for this team. You had Jackson Chourio, the young 20-year-old. He was able to have a nice debut. I believe that he drove in a run or had a nice hit yesterday. And for the New York Mets, they had one hit yesterday. That was a Starling Marte home run. You gotta get the feeling that they're going to be able to do a little bit more moving forward. I've got my question marks with Francisco Alvarez, and you've got power in the lineup. Are you going to be able to get Harrison Bader to be able to move the line to be able to get on base. Pete Alonso is someone that you got to figure he's going to be able to get online as well. Francisco Lindor, he was able to 30 plus home runs last season. He's been a little bit of an all or nothing hitter throughout his career. He still is able to find a way to be able to get on base from time to time, and I do think that Brandon Nimmo is going to prioritize getting on base along Jeff McNeil just a touch more. I did set the Mets at a minus 133. I just strangely have a bit more faith here in Severino other than DL Holland. If the Mets get a lead, Edwin Diaz is just such a big X factor. But semi-total at 8.1 because I do have my question marks with both of these starters. And I do think that the Mets, they get online a little bit more with their offense. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with the Metropolitans. Don't want any part of that run line, by the way. 903, 904 on the betting board. The Philadelphia Phillies play LC Atlanta Braves. Mad Max Fried is on the bump for the Bravos, and Aaron Supernola is on the bump for the Phillies. The Phillies are an underdog of between plus 115 to plus 123. Meanwhile, for the Bravos, between minus 130 to minus 142, your number on them. 8 is the total. Over is minus 115. The under is minus 105. Did somebody total it at 8.3? I'm looking at the over. You've got a Atlanta Braves team that they just led the National League in so many different offensive categories last year. Last year was the LA Dodgers, and no other offenses really compared to them. And for the Braves, they were able to put up their 9 runs yesterday while not hitting a single home run, and they led the league in terms of home runs last season. Like, you got so many guys that are able to give you 20 plus home runs. Orlando Arcia is a guy that's got a little bit of power, but he needs a little bit more of a move the line guy. Well, Michael Harris is typically like a number 8, number 9 guy. You know that you're locked and loaded. Matt Olson had 50 plus home runs. I believe he led the league in road home runs last season. Marcell Ozuna got his act together towards the back half of the season. Ronald Acuna Jr. seals bases, he hits home runs, he hits for average, he hits for power. He does a little bit of everything. And Atlanta, they do a great job against both lefties and righties, but this is a guy in Aaron Nola who's got, throughout his career, a full point better on his ERA when he's at home rather than on the road. Now, you did see some pretty demonstrative home and road splits from throughout his career, and he just was a little bit off last season. 4.46 ERA. Swing and miss stuff, though, it is still there. He's still not walking a lot of guys, only at about 2.1 walks per 9 innings, and legitimately, on balls in play, he got a little bit unlucky, so I do think that he's going to be able to have a bit of a bounce back this year, and this is a Phillies team that they've got a pretty locked and loaded lineup as well. Yohan Rojas leaves a lot to be desired at the plate, but other than that, Kyle Schwarber, certainly not a guy that's going to hit for average, but he's able to belt out those home runs. Alec Boehm is someone that does a great job in terms of both power and being able to get on base. Castellanos is in that fold as well. Trey Turner, he got off to a little bit of a rough start last season, went 0 for 4 in the season opener yesterday, and Bryce Harper, I do think that he's going to be able to get online as well. Biggest trepidation that you've got with the Phillies, this bullpen, because they were great towards back half of the season last year, but much like we saw yesterday, front half of the season in 2023, first month or so, they were absolutely awful. I do think that that might have been a little bit of a one-off. You still have a guy that I like in Connor Brogdon that's able to give you some solid innings. Junior Marte towards back half of the season last year was solid. I like Sir Anthony Dominguez towards the back half of the game along with Gregory Soto. And then for the Atlanta Braves, this is a bullpen that could be a little bit hit or miss. Pierce Johnson in a Braves uniform has recorded a sub-1 ERA. Rossiel Iglesias, Joey Menes, these are guys, they're able to get the job done. But for Max Fried, I do think that for him, it is going to be a case where is he able to just really be able to get off to a nice start, because we have seen him in past years just be banged up towards the beginning part of the season. It's been a little bit touch and go. This year he had a little bit more of a full off season than he's had in past years, and when he was out there on the field last year, he was terrific. He had about like 2 walks per 9 innings. He had a little bit of a rough go of it in that postseason start against the Phillies, but he was dealing with injury in that one. I don't hold that against him. He's a solid but not great swing and miss guy, but he's a guy that does hold the ball in the arc quite a bit. But I do think that season opener for Max Fried along with Aaron Nola, I do think that both of these guys are going to be a little bit out of form, and I think that the hitters are actually going to be ahead of the pitchers in this one. So I did set my total at 8.3. I'm looking at the over. I do think that the Phillies, after they let yesterday get away, I do think that they bounce back here. Set the Phillies as a very narrow minus 102 favorite. So riding with the Phillies on the money line and the over. 905, 906 on the betting board. It is the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they walk the plank as they're facing off against the Miami Marlins. Ryan Weathers goes for the fish, and you've got Jared Jones, not to be confused with Jerry, on the bump for the Pirates. The Pirates find themselves as very slim underdogs. You're going to be finding them between about even money to minus 108, between minus 107 to minus 112. Your number on Miami, 8.5 is the total. Over is minus 115. The under is minus 105, and Actually, semi-total at 88.2. I'm looking at the under. Now, Ryan Weathers in his first few years at the big league level has been an absolute disaster. What a lot of people forget about Ryan Weathers is that this is a relatively young guy. It looks like his velocity is starting to get up a little bit more. I mean, when you're a guy that's only 24 years old and you're going into pretty much season number 4 at the big league level, and that does say a little bit of something. He was probably brought up a little bit too quickly by his organizations. Meanwhile, you've got young 22-year-old Jared Jones, who he was able to absolutely rip it up at the minor league level a season ago. This is a guy that gives you some relatively good swings and misses, a second-round pick in the 2020 MLB draft. This guy has been absolutely awesome. I like what he's able to do. I think that he's probably the best pitching prospect that you've got for the Pittsburgh Pirates, not named Paul Skeens. And when it comes to this Pittsburgh Pirates lineup, we've seen them really light it up here to begin the season. Oniel Cruz was able to hit a home run in the debut game a few days ago. You've got a Pirates team that might not have a ton of power this year, but you've got guys that are able to move the line much more than a season ago. Andrew McCutchen is that veteran presence for the team, but guys like Cabrian Hayes, Ed Olivares, Brian Reynolds, they do a good job of just being able to find a way on. Reynolds is able to supply you with 20-plus home runs. Now, I've got my question marks with the likes of Rowdy Tellez, and if Henry Davis can be a little bit less all or nothing at the plate, that'd be big, but you've got a lot of upside there. Meanwhile, for the Miami Marlins, Luis Arias, he's starting out the year 0-for. That's something that's very surprising. You got to figure that he's going to pick it up, and really, other than Jake Berger, you don't have a ton of power for this team. Josh Bell has been all over the place in recent years. Like last season, he was just a little bit more dormant in general. During the 2021 campaign, he was able to find it once again with the Washington Nationals. So have to have your question marks there, and he would love to stick it to his old team, the Pittsburgh Pirates. But you've got Jazz Chisholm and Brian De La Cruz. They both are able to hit for an okay average. They're able to give you a little bit of power. And then the question becomes, can guys like Avicio Garcia, Tim Anderson, veterans that have had success in this league before, be able to find it a bit more? That's a big, giant question mark. You've got a Pirates bullpen that it's not bad. You've got Aroldis Chapman. You've got David Bednar. These guys are relatively solid in the back innings. I like Jose Hernandez. And for the Miami Marlins, this team won so many one-run games last season, and they were very fortunate to win those one-run games, but it's a little bit of an underrated bullpen of their own. Someone like an Anthony Bender was able to supply a sub-4 ERA. They no longer have A.J. Puck in the back end because they had to start him yesterday, but George Soriano is a good long guy for the team. Andrew Nardi had a sub-350 ERA, so I do think that this is a spot where you're going to be able to get some better pitching than expected. I semi-total at 8.2, very pitcher-friendly ballpark. I like the under for Jones. I think that his upside is there, but with Ryan Weathers just having more MLB experience in general, I do default a little bit more to that in this spot, especially with the game in Miami. So I did set Miami as a minus 113 favorite. Want to take them on this pretty tight money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at the under. 907, 908 on the betting board. The Washington Nationals hit the road face-off against the Cincinnati Reds, and yes, we are on to Cincinnati. Bill Belichick, and they're on to Hunter Green getting the start, and Patrick Corbin, the old turkey tosser himself, is on the bump for Washington. Total on this game is 9. Overs between minus 115 to a minus 120. The unders between even a minus 105. Between minus 160 and minus 166. Your number on the Red Legs between plus 140 and plus 150. That number on Washington, if you're looking at the run line, getting it between plus 120 to a plus 125 on the Reds. I was willing to lay minus 114 on the Reds run line. I do have to go opposite of our good friend Rob in this one. I'm going to be taking a look at the Reds on the run line. Now, what I will say for Hunter Green is, if you take a look at his time at the big league level, he's actually got negative home and road splits, and that he's actually pitched far better when he has been on the road rather than when he has been at home in his 2 seasons at the big league level. His ERA is about a 4.62. It's well north of 5 at home, and it's because he just gives up so many home runs, because this is very much a hitter's ballpark out there in Cincinnati. But for Patrick Corbin, he had the 5.20 ERA last year, but if you look at the advanced numbers, he actually pitched worse last year than he did when he was like truly a fade during the 2021-22 seasons. He got a little bit luckier on balls in play. His strikeout to walk rate was actually worse last year than it had been the past 2 years, so that does give me a lot of pause with Patrick Corbin. And who for the Washington Nationals is really backing him up? Jordan Weems is not too bad of a pitcher on the bullpen. They've now got Tanner Rainey after he was out last season. Dylan Flores, someone I don't have a lot of faith in. Kyle Finnegan, he's a jag, just a guy. And then for the Cincinnati Reds, pretty underrated bullpen. If you could get Fernando Cruz being back to what he was 2 seasons ago, that's going to be big. TJ Antone is someone that I've always liked for this team. I also think that having Lucas Stims still out there, that's pretty solid. I do think that this is going to be a bullpen that surprises a lot of people this year. And for the Cincinnati Reds, you do have a lineup that is very formidable. Christian Encarnacion Strand has been a wonder in spring training each of the last 2 years. I think that this is going to be a year where he breaks out. They pick up Jameer Candelario in the offseason. That gives them a little bit more just in general. And Nick Martini, I don't think he's going to be hitting 2 home runs a game, but now that you've got those veteran presence that they are a little bit less all or nothing, like Ellie De La Cruz last season, he made some amazing plays, but he didn't make the routine plays. If these veterans can bring him along, being like, you know what, you don't have to make the amazing play every single time. We just need you to move the line. I think that that's going to be big for this team, and I do think that they're going to provide that. And then you do have a nice table setter in Jonathan India as well. While the Washington Nationals, you've got guys that are able to get on base. There's no question about it. But what are you going to be able to get out of the offseason signings at Eddie Rosario along with Jesse Winker? These are the guys that you need to provide a little bit of pop along with Joey Gallo, which I honestly think that that might be a little bit of a negative for the Nationals. While their run production on the road last season wasn't too amazing, at the very least, you knew guys like Joey Meneses, Lane Thomas, Keibert Ruiz were going to be able to get on base. And I mean, these guys, they have a little bit of pop in the bat, especially Thomas, who had north of 20 home runs last season. Now bringing in Joey Gallo, like, I feel like we know what he's going to be. He's going to strike out 200 plus times this year. He's probably going to give you 30 home runs, but I don't think that he's going to do a lot of good for this team. And I just take a look at this ordeal. I think that both of these pitchers get lit up in this spot. I set my total at 9.8. Hunter Green has the amazing fastball and the strikeouts, but he gives up the bombs. And for Patrick Corbin, well, he just bombs in general, and he's not backed up by a great bullpen. So did set the Reds to where I'm willing to lay up to a minus 114 on this run line. Being able to get plus money, I set the money line at a 204. I'm going to be willing to rock with that Reds run line to go along with the over. 909, 910 on the betting board. The Slam Diego Padres play OC San Francisco Giants. Jordan Hicks is going to be going for the Giants. Dylan Cease is on the bump for the Padres. I laugh because it's just weird to see Jordan Hicks as a starter. And for the San Francisco Giants, they're between a plus 114 to a plus 121 underdog. Any between minus 130 to minus 135. Your number on the pod, 7.5 to 8 is the total on the 7.5. Overs between minus 115 to minus 120. Unders between even and minus 105 on the 8. Unders between minus 115 to minus 120. The overs between even and minus 105. I'm going to be willing to go with the Padres. I did set the Padres at a minus 146. If you're taking a look at the run line, you're able to get it at a relatively solid plus number. This is between plus 154 to a plus 160. I'd be willing to take anything of a plus 148 or greater. For me personally, I do take a look at this ordeal, and this is a case where I'm going to be taking a look at a little bit of a bigger plus money run line, just because I've got massive questions with Jordan Hicks being a starter. I think the St. Louis Cardinals tried this a few years ago, and it just flamed out in spectacular fashion. He never really got past 3 innings, so this is try number 2 to make Jordan Hicks into a starter. And he didn't have the world's worst spring or anything like that, but I do take a look at Jordan Hicks, and he just throws a very flat fastball. He throws really, really good steam, but he's never really had great command. I just have to wonder how deep into a game he's going to go. Now, that can work a little bit better with the San Francisco Giants, a team that is able to mix and match with a lot of these guys. You've got a lot of guys that they are able to give you multiple innings. I have to think that Keaton Wynn is going to be starting at some point, so I don't think that they're going to be able to utilize him as a piggyback sort of option, but you've got Rogers squared. Both of these guys are very solid out there in the bullpen. Someone like a Ryan Walker is probably going to be able to lend a little bit of length, had a little bit of a rough spring training, but that said, I think that he's going to be relatively solid moving forward. I do like this bullpen, but it is a San Diego Padres team that after they got so unlucky last season, I think that they're going to be able to bust out, and I do think that they're going to be quite a bit better than they were a season ago. You've got a pair of guys in the middle of the lineup in Manny Machado along with Fernando Tatis Jr. that they're able to hit for average, they're able to hit for power. They're just complete players in general. Ha-Sung Kim had one of the highest WARs in all baseball last season. His hitting really came a long way last year, and I think it's just so big that the team now has a catcher in Luis Campusano who's able to give some stability to that position that last year was just so awful for the team, coupled with Xander Bogaerts looking quite a bit better to begin the season. And for the San Francisco Giants, they did a nice job picking up some pieces in the offseason. After second half of the season, they were pretty much the worst team in the National League in terms of run creation, and it is very much a whole square than the sum of its parts offense. Guys like Wilmer Flores, Michael Conforto, Therio Estrada, Lamonte Wade Jr., they all hit for a relatively solid average. All guys are going to give you between about 15 to 20 home runs, but now being able to bring in their Ore Soler, who consistently gets a 30-plus home runs, even in that big ballpark in San Francisco, I think that he's going to be solid. Matt Chapman can be a little bit all or nothing with the bat, but he went deep yesterday after Joe Musgrove. It looks like he's going to get off to a nice start, much like he did last season, and I have a little bit of hope that Jung-Ho Lee is going to be able to figure it out at the big league level. That's going to be solid for him as well. But now you have to go up against Dylan Cease, who he had a just year of reckoning last year with the Chicago White Sox. I think that so much of that was just being around a White Sox team that was a sinking ship in general. But as we know, he's able to get a whole bunch of punch-outs. His strikeouts per 9 rate last season was still darn near 11. The walks, he's got to work on those. He's been giving up the last 2 seasons right around about 4 walks per 9 innings. That knocks him out early, but he's still backed up by a Padres bullpen that even without Josh Hader, it's pretty solid. Now, you want to avoid Johnny Burrito at all costs. This guy has been absolutely terrible, and I don't think it's going to get better moving forward, but you pick up on Yeldy Los Santos, Tom Cosgrove, Robert Suarez. These are good bullpen pieces. I mean, all the guys I mentioned, sans really Suarez, were able to post up a sub-3.5 ERA. Wandy Peralta was rock solid with the New York Yankees last season, so I do take a look at this spot, and I do think that the Padres, they certainly have the pitching advantage with Dylan Cease out there on the mound. It is still very much a pitcher's ballpark, but I think that the Giants are going to struggle against Dylan Cease. I think that he comes out start number 1 for the Padres very, very strong, and I think that Jordan Hicks gives up most of the runs in this game. I set my total at 7.3. I'm going to be diving in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the massive plus number that we're seeing on that Padres run line. 9-11, 9-12 on the betting board. It is the Arizona Diamondbacks playing against the Colorado Rockies. Austin Gomber hopes to not get gombered up by the Diamondbacks, and Tommy Henry is on the bump for Arizona. Arizona is between minus 180 to minus 192 on the money line. Between plus 160 and plus 170 is your number on Colorado. If you're looking at the run line, by the way, getting between even money and plus 105 on the stakes, laying a 1.5. 9 is the total. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. I'm willing to take the Diamondbacks run line. I was willing to lay up to about a minus 102 on that run line, so getting any sort of plus money / even money, I'm going to be willing to roll there. Now, for Austin Gomber, he wasn't terrible on the road last season. At home, he was absolutely awful. 5.50 ERA. His road ERA was sub 4, though, so you've got a little bit of, shall we say, brightness there. Has never really been a great swing and miss guy, though. He got fewer than 6 strikeouts per 9 innings last season. The command is relatively okay, but this is someone that's going to have the ball and play against him quite a bit. I don't think that the Arizona Diamondbacks are as good as the offense was night number 1 when they owned the 16 spot in the first 3 innings. I think that was just a case of Guy Freeland's just not very good in general, but for Arizona, you do have quite a bit of balance with regards to this lineup. You've got a guy in Christian Walker that's able to give you 30-plus home runs. Lourdes Gurriel, Ketel Marte of the Marte Parte. These 2 guys do a solid job getting on base. I like the pickup of Jock Peterson, a guy that's a good situational bat. Corbin Carroll at the top of the lineup. He hits for power. He's able to steal a whole bunch of bags. And then you got Eugenio Suarez, who can be a little bit all or nothing, but I think that that's big. The guys towards the bottom of the fold, like Geraldo Perdomo, so I have some question marks there, though. He did a solid job moving the line last season, and for the Rockies, they do have the benefit of not having to deal with the elevation shifts quite yet, which does help out this offense a little bit, but I mean, this is just still a really poor lineup in general. Chris Bryant got completely overpaid a few off seasons ago. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to find his form. Charlie Blackmon, I mean, he got paid a whole bunch of money, and he's been rock solid for many, many years in Major League Baseball, but I mean, he just doesn't have the power that he used to. Last season had about a 363 on base, but with all these Colorado Rockies hitters, they have an on-base percentage that's like 40, 50 points higher when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. Nolan Jones, 20-plus home runs. I like his overall game, but when you got Brendan Rodgers hitting cleanup, Ezekiel Tovar getting starts, I mean, you know where this team is at offensively, and I mean, it's offensive what they throw out there in terms of a bullpen as well. They had one good bullpen piece last season in Brent Suter, and he's now gone. So you're looking at Jake Bird, Jalen Beeks, Nick Mears, Tyler Kinley. I mean, my goodness. How are they supposed to hold any sort of lead when there's a rare circumstance where they actually get a lead? I have no idea. So that's not great. Meanwhile, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, it is a bullpen that was very shaky last season. Scott McGough got a little bit unlucky on balls in play. I like Kyle Nelson. I think that this could be a little bit of a bounce back here for Joe Mantiply. I have my question marks with Miguel Castro, Luis Frias, but all in all, I think that it's going to be an okay, not great, not terrible bullpen. So I did set my total at a 9.3. I think that Tommy Henry, who's never really been too much of a swing and miss guy, but is still very, very young. I believe that he played his college baseball over there at Michigan. I think that he's going to be able to develop a little bit more this season, and you saw that development towards the back half of the season last year. Tommy Henry got off to a little bit of a rough start, and then prior to him getting injured, it was really looking like he was starting to find something. He had given up 3 runs or fewer in 6 out of his last 7 starts prior to him getting injured. The walks are still a little bit of an issue, but I do think that he's going to be able to come off of injury, give a good start against a Rockies team that should be able to boost the confidence of all these Diamondbacks pitchers. I did set my total at 9.3. I just flat out don't think that the Rockies do their part with this total. So looking at the under and with the Diamondbacks, want to lay up to minus 102 with regards to this run line. 913, 914 on the betting board. It is the LA Dodgers. They play host the St. Louis Cardinals. Lance Lynn goes for the Cards, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto is on the bump for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are anywhere between minus 203 to minus 220 on the money line, between plus 180 and plus 195. Your number on St. Louis. 9 is the total. Under is between minus 110 to a minus 120. Over is between even and minus 110. I set my total at 9.6. Even at a 9.5, I'd be looking at this total over. You've got a guy in Lance Lynn that just led the league in home runs last season, and he is able to give you a whole bunch of strikeouts, but even in this very ballpark in Los Angeles, he just can't stop giving up bombs. 5.73 ERA. The command, I mean, it's okay, but he does give up about 3.5 walks per 9 innings. He's a very much an all-or-nothing sort of pitcher, and now he's 36 years old. You've got to figure that the swing and miss stuff is going to be going downward a little bit. He had a lot of success his first time around with the St. Louis Cardinals, but now he's an old man on a Cardinals team that does not back him up with a very good bullpen whatsoever. The only guy in the bullpen last year that had a sub 3.5 ERA for the Cardinals is Ryan Helsley. I like him, and I mean, they pick up Andrew Kittredge. I think that was a nice pickup for the team, but Giovanni Gallegos has question marks after a rough season last year. They've got Matthew Liberatore coming out of the bullpen, Andre Palante, Jojo Romero. Man, that's not something that you want to bank on him. For the LA Dodgers, they have one of the top bullpens in terms of ERA last season, and they do lose some of those guys like Caleb Ferguson and company, but Ryan Brazier, since he's put on Dodger Blue, has had a sub 1 ERA since the beginning part of last season. I still just can't trust in Joe Kelly. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I just can't. But I really love what Evan Phillips is able to do in the back half of games. Danny Hudson is big. At some point, I think they're going to get Blake Tryon back. That's going to be massive as well. The big question is, can Yamamoto be able to just have his game translate to the big league level? Because I do think that he's going through a big transition. Comes over from the Nippon Baseball League where they don't have the pitch clock, and now they have the pitch clock, and we saw a lot of professional pitchers struggle with it last season. I think that Yamamoto is going to a little bit as well. Keep in mind, the whole translator situation, the translator of Shohei Ohtani, I believe, was serving as that of Yamamoto as well, so that was a little bit of a changeover, and that happened literally hours before his start out there in Seoul, South Korea, so I do think that he's going to be a little bit of a better mindset there, and even if he's not, this is a Dodgers team that even if they get down by a few runs and Yamamoto gets destroyed, you've got an offense that they're able to destroy Lance Lynn. Let's call it what it is. You've got Mookie Betts, who's off to a nice start already this year. He's going to be an MVP candidate, in my opinion. He's able to supply home runs. He's able to get on base. He's able to steal bases. I mean, he does it all. Will Smith is right now getting jiggy with it. He should be good for 25 plus home runs. Does a nice job being able to move the line. Gavin Lux, want to see him be a little bit more consistent. Still have a few question marks there, but Shohei Ohtani, we know what he's able to do with the bat. James Outman should be in for a big year. We all know what Freddie Freeman is able to do with the power with regards to the average, and you've got a St. Louis Cardinals team that is one of the best hitting teams in all baseball. Now, Mason Wynn, I still have my question marks with him as a prospect. I think he could be good 2 to 3 years from now. He really struggled when he came up last year, though. You've got Brendan Donovan, who does a solid job of being able to move the line, but the Cardinals do have quite a few guys that do have some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. Donovan is one of those guys in terms of being able to reach base. As if you looked at the first game of the season, Paul Goldschmidt was the only guy that got hit for the St. Louis Cardinals. He had 3 hits, and the rest of the team had 0, but I do think that should iron out. He and Nolan Arenado are probably going to combine for like 55, 60 home runs. Nolan Gorman, not necessarily the world's best hitter for average, but he's able to give you power. Jordan Walker and Wilson Contreras do a solid job moving the line as well. I do think that for Yamamoto, he's going to have his struggles, but I think Lance Lynn has far bigger struggles, and for the Dodgers, once again, they've won in each of the last 2 years 100 plus games. In both of those years, I think that they had like a combined 36 or 37 one-run wins in both years combined. So, I mean, the Dodgers either lose outright or they win by multiple runs. I set my Dodgers run line at a minus 120. So, currently seeing this as good as a plus 102 in some spots, seeing more minus 105 to minus 110 out there, even up to about a minus 115. I'd be willing to lay the Dodgers run line to go along with this total over as well. 915, 916 on the betting board. The Detroit Tigers hit the road to face off against the Chicago White Sox. Mike Soroka is on the bump for the White Sox, and Kenta Maeda is on the bump for Detroit. Detroit between minus 135 to minus 142 favorites, and between plus 120 to plus 128. Your number on the Shy Sox. Your total on this game, it is 8 over and under, anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 115, and with the Southsiders. I did set them as a underdog of plus 144. Seeing the money line, I'd be willing to lay it here with the Tigers. It becomes a case of, do you want the run line or not? Seeing it between plus 115 to plus 120, I would need a little bit more there. I'm going to stick with a little bit of a chalkier money line here just because with the Detroit Tigers, I actually really like their pitching. I still have question marks in terms of bats of this team, though, as Spencer Torkelson towards the back half of the season was solid. And if you look at the Tigers in the front half of the season, they were deplorable at the plate. They were one of the worst offenses in all baseball. I'm not saying they were amazing in the second half of the year, but in terms of run creation in the back half of the season, they weren't a bottom 5 team or anything like that. So they were able to take some strides forward. I like the pick of Mark Canha. I think that he can help the team out, but Javi Baez has been an absolutely terrible signing for the team. I like Riley Green, the way that he's able to move the line for the team. Matt Vierling was able to give you a little bit of something, but you don't necessarily have a ton of power with regards to this lineup. You don't necessarily have a ton of guys that do an amazing job of being able to reach base. I think that Parker Meadows has quite a bit of upside after he was able to give the team about a 340 on base last season, but Tigers are going to need to win this game with their pitching, and I do think that they're going to be able to do so. I mean, these bullpens don't compare. The Chicago White Sox just have 50 guys of stink on their team. Meanwhile, you've got Alex Lang, you've got Tyler Holton, Jason Foley. These are guys that are relatively solid for the Tigers. You don't necessarily have that one lockdown guy that's going to give you a sub-2 ERA, but not a lot of guys that post up like a 3.3, 3.5 ERA. Will Vest is solid, not great. Andrew Chafin, he gets the job done, and for the White Sox at this point, they would love to have a bullpen piece that gets the job done. Michael Kopech, it looks like he's going to be moved to the bullpen. You bring in Tim Hill, he's always had his question marks with the San Diego Padres. John Brebbia was probably one of the weakest links out there on the San Francisco Giants roster. I just look at this bullpen, Dominic Leone, Steven Wilson. You just really can't have faith in any of these guys. And for the Chicago White Sox, in their first game of the season, they scored as many runs as Greg Peterson. That would be 0. And you have to wonder what you're going to be able to get out of this lineup moving forward. I think that Andrew Benintendi is going to be a nice table setter for this team, but Paul DeJong has really had his struggles in recent years. Andrew Vaughn is really the lone guy that's willing to take a pitch on this team, by the way. That's a big thing for the White Sox. They have no plate discipline whatsoever. You've got 9 free swingers and nobody that's willing to just move the line, get a walk. You've got a whole bunch of guys that try to get a home run, and these guys are about as powerful as Ned Flanders. That's not what you want. Eli Jimenez, Luis Robert, these guys, they give you a bit of power, and I like Robert and the fact that he's able to do a solid job moving the line, but now you've got Martin Maldonado and Nicky Lopez at the bottom of the full. Good grief. I mean, those are 2 automatic outs, so I did take a look at this spot, and I do think that Kenta Maeda should be able to give you a relatively solid outing. With Kenta Maeda, he is someone that is coming off of his fair share of injuries. He had a 4.23 ERA last season, but much of that was due to the fact that his first few starts were just absolutely rough. He had that 10-run outing against the New York Yankees. He was then put on the shelf for a few months, and he did act up towards the back half of the season, but if you take a look at him between regular season and postseason, in his final 7 appearances, 3 runs of fear surrendered, and every one of them, this guy was a fringe Cy Young candidate a few seasons ago when he had that 2.70 ERA. I believe that was the 2020 season, if I'm not mistaken. He's a solid swing and miss guy, not an amazing one, but he does a okay job giving you about 2.8, 2.9 walks per 9 innings. I think that he's going to be able to do a solid job here against the White Sox. And for Mike Soroka, I do think that he's going to be able to find it once again. He had a relatively solid spring. I still do have my question marks with him, though. 6.40 ERA last season. You could tell that he's just not the guy that he once was. The swing and miss stuff back when he was at full force was never necessarily explosive, but now he's got a little bit of a decrease in command to go along with a not-so-explosive fastball. He gave up 9 home runs in 32 and a third innings a season ago, going against a Detroit Tigers team that I think is much improved. I do think that he's going to get shelled in this spot. Like I said, I don't want the run line in the spot, but I'm going to be willing to ride with the Detroit Tigers. I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line, set them at a minus 144, and did set my total at 8.4. Once again, this White Sox bullpen, I don't think that they're going to be holding anything whatsoever, and I think that where you get a lot of your runs, it's off of Mike Soroka and off of this just bad bullpen. So I actually do like this total over, and I'm going to be willing to take the Tigers on the money line. 917, 918 on the betting board. It is the LA Angels on the road facing off against the Baltimore Orioles. Grayson Rodriguez is on the bump for Baltimore, and Griffin Canning is on the bump for the Angels. 8.5 is the total. Over and under, both at minus 110, with the Orioles, you're getting them between minus 168 to a minus 175. Between plus 143 and plus 155 is your number on the Angels, and Set the Orioles at a minus 192 on the money line. If you're looking at the run line, you're able to get plus money, plus 120 on the Orioles. I recognize that a lot of people have a little bit of trepidation taking these run line favorites at home, but I'm going to be willing to do so here. With the LA Angels, I actually think that Griffin Canning is going to give you a good start. Griffin Canning, he's not going to be like some sort of an all-star pitcher or anything in my opinion, but I do think that there's quite a bit of upside there. He gets a good amount of swings and misses. He's worked on the command a little bit in recent years, and just in watching his games in general. Last year, he posted up an ERA that was a little bit north of 4, but I mean, the fielding independent was relatively on point with that, and he got a little bit of bad luck. There were like some balls that should have been fielded out there in the field that did not go his way. I know that there was like a pass ball in that game against the Houston Astros that I remember just completely derailed him in general, but I do think that Griffin Canning, all in all, does have a little bit of upside, does need to reduce on the home runs, though. He was giving up about 1.6, 1.7 home runs per 9 innings a season ago, and for the Baltimore Orioles, well, you don't have that one like main mash or Anthony Santander. If you do have a guy, he is probably that guy. He did have a home run opening day, but and you've got a lot of balance with this team. Like I could see Gunnar Anderson, Rushman, Santander, Cedric Mullins, all these guys being able to go out and give you about 25 or so home runs along with Ryan Mountcastle. You've got quite a few young guys that just do a solid job, being able to give you good professional at-bats like Jordan Westberg. You've got really good platooning with guys like a Ryan O'Hearn, Colton Cowser, that in good situational spots, they're able to do a nice job moving the line. And I mean, ever since Adley Rushman has come up to the big leagues, by the way, want to talk about a night and day difference with the Baltimore Orioles, it is that. Now, the one thing that does hurt the Orioles is the fact that Felix Bautista is out of the fold, which means that now you need to rely upon the 8th and 9th inning duo of Yannier Cano, who I like, and Craig Kimbrell, who I don't. Like, yeah, you want to be avoiding him at all costs, but the good news is Dylan Tate, after he missed all of last year, 2 years ago, he was a good setup man. He's back in the fold for the team, so it's still a relatively solid bullpen. Mike Baumann is someone they like in the pen as well, and for the LA Angels, man, they've always been rough with their bullpen pitching, and I don't see how it's going to be any different this year. Carlos Estevez had a really nice start to the year last year as a closer, and then he just completely unraveled. Jose Cicerno, Adam Simber, these are cast-offs that had really rough years last season. You've got Guillermo Zunguilla, who's getting innings now. That's not where you want to be. Matt Moore is actually a guy that I relatively like. He had a sub-3 ERA. He's had a nice second act as a relief piece, and for the Angels, the question becomes, are you going to be able to get any offense out of someone not named Mike Trout? Mike Trout had a nice home run in the opening day game Thursday, but I take a look at the rest of these guys. Miguel Sano has never been able to hit for average. Nolan Chanel, what are you going to be able to get out of him? Logan O'Hoppe is someone who had a little bit of upside towards the beginning part of the season last year. He got hurt. Anthony Rendon is one of the biggest wastes of money in all of baseball. Luis Renifo is someone I like, but he and Brendan Drury, they sort of come and go. Joe Adell has not been able to set fire to the rain. I just look at this Angels lineup, and they struggle against lefties, they struggle against righties, and if you don't have Mike Trout just absolutely firing all cylinders and doing it all, this is an Angels team I think is going to have a really rough go of it in general. I did set my total on 8.7 because once again, I think Canning is going to be able to do a solid job, but I have no faith whatsoever in this Angels bullpen and this Orioles team. They just find a way to manufacture runs. And then for Grayson Rodriguez, I do think that in terms of what we saw last season, he had a 4.35 ERA overall, but his first act at the big league level, he got like 8 or so starts. He had well north of a 6 ERA in the first 2 months of the season. As a matter of fact, when he got sent down to the minor leagues, he was posting up a 7.35 ERA. When he got sent up for the months of July, August, and September, I mean, the guy was absolutely sensational. I think that he gave up north of 3 runs just once. I think that we're going to see that iron out a little bit more, but Grayson Rodriguez, I do believe, is a real deal. 24-year-old guy who he actually went down with regards to his strikeouts second time that he was up, but the command was so much better, and I think that that's a big key for him moving forward against an Angels team that especially they just aren't necessarily great at being able to put bat to ball. I did set my total at 8.7 as I do think that the Orioles do much of the damage in this one. I like the Orioles run line and I like the over in this spot. 919, 920 on the betting board. It is the Oakland AAAs and they play host to the Cleveland Guardians. Tanner Bybee is on the bump for Cleveland and JP Sears is on the bump for Oakland. Oakland is an underdog between plus 120 to a plus 130 and between minus 133 to a minus 142 is your number number on Cleveland. 7.5 to 8 is the total. On the 8, under is minus 120. The over is even. On the 7.5, over is minus 120. Under is even. Semi-total is 7.4. I do like this total under now. Do keep in mind that this is a day game out there in Oakland, and the ball just flies different during the daytime rather than the nighttime. When you've got the nighttime games out there in Oakland, the marine layer is out, and it's just such a slog to try to hit the ball out of the yard. During the daytime, it is a little bit more of a hitter's ballpark, but I do take a look at JP Sears, and he actually had worse numbers at home rather than on the road last season. I do think that that's going to iron out. For JP Sears, he was giving up about 1.8 home runs per 9 innings when he was at home. I think that there's actually a lot of upside with JP Sears. He's not an amazing swing and miss guy, but he was able to supply the team within the neighborhood about 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. His command is right there. He only gives up about 2.6, 2.7 walks per 9 innings. And if you take a look at the way that he pitched in terms of the fielding independent versus the ERA, he did get a little bit unlucky in his first few seasons over there with Oakland. Last year he did have a fielding independent more around a 5.15. Season before that was more around a 470, while he had a 4.70 ERA overall with Oakland. I do think that he's got a bit of upside. I think that he's going to be able to figure it out. And for the Oakland A's, I just don't know who's going to be able to put bat to ball for the team like literally all season. Shea Langoliers is able to give you a little bit of power, but for the Oakland A's as a collective, they were hitting about 223 at home last season, and it's not like they got markedly better with regards to their lineup. I think JJ Bleday could be able to take a few strides forward. They pick up JD Davis, but JD Davis last season, he was coming off of just a terrible year for the San Francisco Giants. About a 325 on base, 18 home runs. 2022 was a year to forget for him as well. Ever since he had that nice 2019 campaign, he just has not really been an amazing hitter, and now he's looking for a new lease on life. Brent Rooker had a nice year last year, but and he, like so many others, just hit much better when he was away from him rather than at home. You've got Esteury Ruiz, who he's able to do a nice job stealing bases, but if you can't get him on base, you can't utilize that. And for the Cleveland Guardians, yes, this team was dead last in the big leagues in terms of home runs last season. They are not going to provide a lot of power this year as well, but you've got guys, unlike the Oakland A's, that find a way to move the line. Jose Ramirez, he's your main power source for the team. He's going to give you 20-plus home runs. He does a nice job being able to reach base, but guys like Steven Kwan, Andres Jimenez, they're able to hit for singles. Jimenez 2 seasons ago had north of a 350 on base. Steven Kwan always does a good job being able to give you those solid singles. What you're going to be able to get out of the catcher spot is David Fry, Austin Edges, Bo Naylor. I actually really like Bo Naylor, but the other two, they are rough to say the least. And then you just need to have someone like a Tyler Freeman be able to take some strides forward in a limited sample size in 2022. He looked relatively solid last year, regressed a little bit. We shall see what we get out of him moving forward, but also with the Guardians, this bullpen is one of the best out there in the American League. When you've got an 8th and 9th inning duo of James Karinchak and Emmanuel Clase, you know that things are going to be very lethal. You've got past that, a few guys are able to do a nice job of helping you out. Nick Sandlin, Eli Morgan, these are guys I like in the bullpen. Tim Herron can be a little bit touch and go, but I mean, it's better than what the Oakland A's are throwing out there. Danny Jimenez is someone that's able to be relatively solid in this bullpen, but past that, what are you going to be able to get out of some of these setup men? You've now got Michael Kelly in the fold. He has been awful the last few seasons. Mitch Spence is someone that they're going to be looking at as sort of like a 5-starter / a long reliever. That's not where you want to be. Lucas Erceg was actually halfway decent a season ago. He posted up a 4.75 ERA, and when that's one of your top relievers, that tells you all that you need to know about this not so great Oakland AAA's bullpen. I don't think that the Guardians are going to be ripping the cover off the ball in this one, but I do think that they get a good enough start from Tanner Bybee to be able to get the job done. For Tanner Bybee, he did a solid job last year. He was able to post up about a 3 or so ERA, got a little bit lucky on the balls in play, but I mean, he does a nice job not giving up a lot of walks, only about 2.5 walks per 9 innings. He's a 9 strikeouts per 9 innings sort of guy, and he's someone that doesn't take too much of a fall off when he's away from him. Certainly he's not as dominant of a pitcher when he's away from Cleveland, but going up against this Oakland A's lineup, that should be really able to accent what he does well overall. So I did set the Cleveland Guardians at a minus 146. I'm willing to take them on the money line. If you're looking at the run line of Cleveland, you're getting that at about a plus 120. I would need a little bit more than that. I'm just going to stick with the money line, as I do think that this is going to be a low-scoring game with two offenses that are one of the worst in the big leagues, especially at hitting it out. So going to be one to lay a chalkier money line here with Cleveland, set by total 7.4. So also looking at the under. 921, 922 on the betting board. The Minnesota Twins hit the road face-off against the Kansas City Royals. Seth Lugo goes for the Royals, and Joe Ryan is on the bump for Minnesota. Minnesota minus 118 to minus 125 favorites, between plus 105 to plus 110. Your number on Kansas City, 8.5 is the total. Under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. Set the Twins at minus 137. I'm going to be able to ride with the Twins money line. Now, with Seth Lugo, he wasn't bad last year. I'm not going to say he was amazing as a starter, but he made the transition from being a relief pitcher to being a starter much better than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for, and his command was really good. He only gave up about 2 walks per 9 innings. Sometimes would just get a little bit too hard for your liking, as his home runs per 9 rate last season was right around about 1.3, and when you're pitching for the San Diego Padres, where you've got a very pitcher-friendly home ballpark, that is a little bit of an issue, but all in all, I thought it was a solid year for him, and that's the big issue that you do have with Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan is able to give you a ton of really good strikeouts. His strikeouts per 9 rate last year was well north of 10. His problem is he gave up right around about 1.8 home runs per 9, and he honestly doesn't even give up a whole heck of a lot of walks either, but you can tell that when he's away from home, typically he gets a little bit out of sorts. He's had an ERA on the road the last few seasons that hovers right around 5, but the question is, can the Royals take those strides forward with their offense? Because I take a look at this Royals team, and I think that they're going to explode any time now in terms of this lineup. Bobby Wood Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, MJ Melendez, you've got the upside there. Are they actually going to put it together? Nelson Velasquez is someone that's able to hit for home runs. Is he going to be able to put it together? That's the big question mark with this team, and I just can't bank on them being able to do so until I see it for a little bit. That's the big issue that you've got for this team. And then they bring in Hunter Renfroe, who he's a professional batter. He's going to give you 20-plus home runs. Not necessarily the world's greatest at moving the line, but he's got some pop. Salvador Perez, he's been hitting a little bit less for average in recent years, but he's able to give you some power. And Bobby Witt Jr., he's a nice 5-tool player. And for the Minnesota Twins, for the love of Pete, can the team stay healthy? Royce Lewis, he hits a home run night number 1, and then he gets injured, and it looks like he's probably going to be out of the fold in this game. That's been factored in. Byron Buxton, I mean, talk about a guy that needs to be wrapped in bubble wrap. That's the guy right there. And then you've got a lot of thumpers that don't necessarily do a great job of being able to get on base. Now, it was very encouraging to see Carlos Correa get 3 hits in that opening day game for the Minnesota Twins, because he just could not get on base last season. If you're able to get that, Max Kepler, Carlos Santana, these are guys who are able to supply power. You have your question marks with them, just being able to make the routine play, being able to move the line, draw a few walks. If they're able to do that, they're going to be in good shape. And this is a Twins bullpen that I feel like is a little bit underrated. Yohan Duran, he's one of the best closers that you're going to find in the big leagues. I do think that they're going to be able to get quite a bit out of guys like Cody Funderburk, Jay Jackson. I like what they're able to provide in the back half of the bullpen. Dan Duarte, he was with the Reds last season. He was posting up right around a 3.70 ERA. I like what he's able to provide. And Stephen Okert was actually very good with the Miami Marlins last season and for the Royals. This team has had one of the worst bullpens in the big leagues in recent years, and it's a little bit better this year. John Schreiber is someone that I like with the Boston Red Sox, especially 2 seasons ago. But what are you going to be able to get moving forward out of veterans like Nick Anderson? Chris Stratton gave up multiple runs in his first appearance. They're relying upon James McArthur being one of their big guys late in games. That's not a place where you want to be, and Will Smith just gets way too jiggy with it. So, circumstance where I'm going to be setting my total at an 8.2. I'm going to be willing to ride with the under, as I do think that both of these starting pitchers are going to be able to figure out something. Both of these guys good with their command, and they go up against a pair of lineups that are questionable, to say the least. So I'm going to be looking at the under, but with the Twins, set them at a minus 137. Willing to bank on this bullpen, so I'm going to be looking at the Twins money line and looking at the under. 923, 924 on the betting board. The Tampa Bay Rays playoffs to the Toronto Blue Jays. Yusei Kikuchi is on the bump for the Jays, and Zach Little hopes to come up big for the Rays, and the Rays are between minus 120 to a minus 125. The Jays are anywhere between plus 105 to plus 112. Toronto is plus 105 to plus 112. Rays and Jays sounds very, very familiar, but that said, the total on this game is 8.5, under is minus 120, and the over is even. With the Tampa Bay Rays, I did set them as a minus 134 favorite. I'm going to be willing to roll with them on the money line. Actually, really like what I saw out of Zach Little last season. And I mean, that's just the Tampa Bay Rays system. You have no idea who these guys are. They've never been starters before in their lives. And then 3 months later, all of a sudden, they're pitching big innings and they're coming up absolutely clutch. Like, I think that they could turn Greg Peterson, who deals with a dislocated right shoulder, and turn me into a starter by the end of the year. I mean, they're just a factory in general. But you take a look at Zach Little as a starter last season. He posted up a sub 3.5 ERA. He did an incredible job with the command, fewer than 1.6 walks per 9 innings. Now, the hard contact, it's a little bit more than what you'd like, but still, 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. It's not like it was terrible by a stretch of your imagination, just not necessarily too great of a strikeout pitcher. And I do feel like a lot of people were sleeping on the Blue Jays bats coming into the season. You still have George Springer, you still have Bo Bichette, pair of guys that are able to give you 20 plus home runs, pair of guys guys are able to move the line. Justin Turner down for what is someone that had a nice year last year with Boston. I think that he's going to be able to do some solid work this season as well. And Vlad Guerrero Jr., still one of the most fearsome hitters out there in all of baseball. He's already got a home run to his credit. You've got Springer already with 2 up there on the board, but for Guerrero, I expect a massive year out of him. It comes down to what are you going to be able to get out of the likes of Dalton Varsho? Can Kavan Beju actually put it together? And Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, what are you going to be able to get out of him after he has spent a few rough seasons out there in New York? And for the Tampa Bay Rays, this team does a very solid job of being able to find a way on base. Harold Ramirez, he was able to win a batting title last season. Jose Siri is one of the few guys that really doesn't hit for average, but he's got a good amount of power in his bat, and he's one of the best fielders overall in all of baseball. The catcher spot is tough. Rennie Pinto, Ben Roach, these 2 guys are going to be automatic outs, but Jared Calabreo, I thought was a really good acquisition by this team. He's got some good wheels, is able to move the line. I liked him over there with the Seattle Mariners. Yandy Diaz is a very complete player. He's already got a home run, 5 hits in his first 2 games. He's been able to do an amazing job both in terms of power and being able to just take his base when needed as well. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, even though they do lose a few guys like Andrew Kittredge in the bullpen, you still have a very good bullpen with Pete Fairbanks being able to close out games. Phil Maton, I think that he's going to be able to recapture that form that he had a few seasons ago with Houston. Jason Adams is a guy that consistently gives you a sub 3.3 ERA. Sean Armstrong is able to give you multiple innings as well. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, they traded for quite a few guys during the season last year in the bullpen, but they lost quite a few of them, like Jordan Hicks. Now you're going to be relying upon Bowden Francis, Yimi Garcia to be able to get the ball to when he's going to be out there, Jordan Romano. But right now they are dealing with quite a few injuries in the bullpen. Romano is currently out of the fold. Eric Swanson is out of the fold. Those are 2 big bullpen pieces for the team. So I think that that's going to be a little bit of their undoing. And then you couple that with the fact that Yusei Kikuchi actually put it together towards the back half of last season. But can we buy into it? Because with Yusei Kikuchi, he 2 years ago was just walking the world, really cut down on the walks last season, but he still gave up quite a bit of hard contact. He still gave up about a home run and a half per 9 innings. Strikeout numbers were actually quite solid. He was able to give the team about 10 and a half or so strikeouts per 9 innings, but I still do have my question marks with Yusei Kikuchi. I want to see a little bit more before I'm willing to fully buy in. Did set my total at 7.7. I do think that both teams are going to be able to get relatively solid starts, and I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game than expected. Tampa Bay is one of the better pitchers ballparks out there in all of baseball, so I do like the under, and I do like the Rays on the money line. Set them at a minus 134. 925, 926 on the card. It is the New York Yankees on the road facing off against the Houston Astros. Hunter Brown goes for the Astros, and Marcus Stroman is on the bump for the Yankees. The Yankees are an underdog of between plus 115, plus 120. Meanwhile, between minus 120 to minus 135, your number on Houston, 9.5 is the total, under is minus 120, and the over is even. I set the Astros at a minus 139, so I'm going to be willing to roll with them on the money line. Was a rough year last year for Hunter Brown, who had north of a 5 ERA when he was at home, but you can tell that this stuff and the upside, it is there with Hunter Brown. Hunter Brown was able to give this team a whole bunch of strikeouts last year. Last year was supplying about 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. The fielding independent was much lower than his 5.09 ERA. I do think that he's going to be able to pick it up quite a bit this season. Was a little bit unlucky on the balls in play. He did give up more home runs than what you'd like to see. He was giving up about 1.4 home runs per 9 innings, and this is now a Yankees team that doesn't completely rely upon Aaron Judge anymore, thank goodness gracious, with them picking up Juan Soto, but with the New York Yankees, you still have to have some question marks at the bottom of the fold. Oswaldo Cabrera has looked amazing the first 2 games of the season, so, I mean, if he could pick this up, the questions have been answered, but Giancarlo Stanton, he's an all-or-nothing hitter that, I mean, he just doesn't have the power that he did towards the beginning part of his season, his career. You've got Anthony Rizzo, who he had that concussion last year. Prior to it, he looked very solid. How is he going to be able to bounce back this season? Austin Wells, and really the entirety of the catcher spot is an issue. Anthony Volpe, he's a good 5-tool player, but he's not necessarily the world's greatest hitter. He doesn't do the world's greatest job of getting on base, doesn't have amazing power. And then for the Houston Astros, we've got a lot of guys in this lineup that they do traditionally get off to rough starts. Alex Bregman is very, very notorious for just having a rough go of it in the first month or 2 of the season. What are you going to be able to get out of Jeremy Pena after last year? He was a big disappointment after being, I believe, World Series MVP 2 seasons ago. Kyle Tucker, though, does a good job moving the line. You know what you're going to be able to get out of Jose Altuve. You had Jose Abreu get off to a rough start last season. He's looked bad in his first 2 games of the season this year, but Yordan Alvarez, you know that he's going to provide 30-plus home runs if he is healthy, and I do think that for both of these teams, the bullpen is going to be very key. You've got 2 of the best in the big leagues for the Houston Astros. They had a little bit of an issue last season in the bullpen, but no longer do they have some of their albatrosses from a season ago. Now, they still do employ Rafael Montero, which I don't understand why they do that, but Seth Martinez is someone I like in the bullpen. Ryan Presley, he had his issues towards the front half of the season in the 9th inning. He's now back in full force, and you've got him along with Josh Hader in those 8th and 9th innings. That's big. Taylor Scott is the guy that they picked up from Boston along with the Oakland A's. I do think that he's got a little bit of upside. If you look at the career numbers, they're not great, but I think that he's got the stuff to be a relatively good bullpen piece, much like Brian Abreu is. And for the New York Yankees, a lot of people sleep on the fact that they've got the likes of Ian Hamilton, Jonathan Loaizaga. These guys are able to lock it down. Question becomes, Marcus Stroman. Are we going to see the guy that was so amazing in the front half of the season last year, like going into the All-Star break, prior to the All-Star break, he was rocking a sub-3 ERA. It looked like it was going to be his year. And then he got destroyed in the month of late July, came back in September. They tried to throw him out of the bullpen. That just did not work whatsoever. And Marcus Stroman, when he was having his success, it felt like he was pitching above his skis all season long. With Stroman, he's never been a great strikeout guy. He had a strikeout to walk rate last year of a 2.3, so he was giving you about 7.5 to 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. He was giving up about 3 walks per 9 innings. He does a good job of being able to induce ground balls and a lot of soft contact, but I have my question marks there, and I do think that with Marcus Stroman, he needs to show it to me before I'm willing to buy back in. I did set my line at a minus 139, willing to go with the Astros on the money line. Did set my total at 8.1. I do think that both of these bullpens are going to be rock solid. This is a low 9.5 that we're seeing on the board, and I think that we went too far, as I do think that both of these teams lock it down in the back half. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to roll with the Astros on the money line, 927, 928 on the betting board. It is the Seattle Mariners, and they play us the Boston Red Sox. Gunnar Crawford goes for the Sox, and Logan Gilbert is on the bump for Seattle. Seattle is a favorite of any between minus 142 to a minus 148, and between plus 124 to plus 135. Your number on Boston, 7.5 is the total, unders minus 120, and the over is even with the Mariners. I set them at a minus 145, seeing some minus 142 to minus 144 out there. Wouldn't want to lay much more than that, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I actually do like what I've seen out of Cutter Crawford in recent years. With Cutter Crawford, you know that he's going to be able to give you some relatively good command. Last season, he was able to do a nice job on that front, only giving up about 2.5 walks and 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. It just was an unlucky pitcher in general. And you look at just his career, 4.74 career ERA compared to a 4.08 fielding independent. He's been one of the most snake-bitten pitchers in the big leagues ever since he has come up to the big league level. And you take a look at what Cutter Crawford was able to do on the road a season ago. He had a road 2.49 ERA compared to a home ERA of 6. You'll notice this quite a bit with these pitchers for the Boston Red Sox, just because Fenway is very unforgiving to pitchers in general. But I do think that his stuff is certainly going to play in a very pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in Seattle. Meanwhile, for Logan Gilbert, he's just solid in every single capacity. He gives you about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. He doesn't walk a lot of guys, fewer than 2 walks per 9 innings. He'll give up about 1.3, 1.4 home runs per 9 innings. He's never going to blow you away. I don't think he's ever going to be quite an all-star, but he's always going to give you a relatively solid, presentable performance as a number 2, number 3 sort of starter. Now it becomes what the Seattle Mariners are able to do with that. You've got Julio Rodriguez, who was really able to take some strides forward last season, being able to do a nice job moving the line, still providing quite a bit of power, but are you going to be able to get out of guys like Big Dumper Cal Raleigh? They made a little bit of a shrewd move, being able to pick up Josh Rojas. That's a guy that I think has a little bit of upside after we saw him with the Arizona Diamondbacks have some triumphs, have some struggles. I believe that he came over with Dominic Canzone last offseason, and these are guys that I think could be relatively solid for the team. They picked up Luis Urias as well from the Milwaukee Brewers. That's a nice signing for the team, and what are you going to be able to get out of the likes of Mitch Garver, Ty France, guys that have a bit of power, guys that have had some good moments in their career, and guys that sometimes struggle. And for the Boston Red Sox, we all know Rafael Devers is one of the best hitters in all of baseball. Rafael Devers was pretty much the main constant for this offense a season ago. He's already got a home run to his name to begin the season this year. And then you did see Tristan Casas back half the season last year, north of a 400 on base ever since the All-Star break. Jarren Duran was really able to put it on as well. He does a nice job being able to move the line. Not supreme power with anyone outside of Devers, but got a lot of guys that they find a way to be able to get on base. Tyler O'Neill should be able to give a little bit of power. Masataka Yoshida, home runs have not been there since he came over from the Nippon Baseball League, but he's a relatively solid bat that doesn't strike out a lot, that finds a way to be able to get on base. Big issue that you've got for the Boston Red Sox. This bullpen, what are you going to be able to get out of these schlubs? Because it's not necessarily so great. I like the fact that they pick up Isaiah Campbell, but you've got Kenley Jansen in the back half, who he's always someone that fails you at just the wrong time. Chris Martin is actually someone that I really like, but Greg Weiser, Yoli Rodriguez, Josh Winkowski, question marks all abound with them. And for the Seattle Mariners, they'll lose a few guys in the bullpen, but they'll just restock and reload. Like, they've done amazing work finding the likes of Gabe Spire, Trent Thornton. They now bring in Cody Bolton. I think he's going to be in for a big year. Andres Munoz has been incredible for the team. They're currently dealing with the injury to Matt Brash, but when they get him back, he has been amazing in the back half of games for the team as well. So it is a circumstance where I do think that both of these starters lend a relatively good start. It's a cooler day out there in a very pitcher-friendly Seattle ballpark, so I did set my total at a 7.7. I do think that the Red Sox are going to do just enough to be able to get you the over in this spot, and I do have my question marks with this Red Sox bullpen as well. I think that Crawford gives you a good start, but you're at a 7.5. I set my total at 7.7. I'm going to be willing to go over. And with Seattle, I did set them as a minus 145 on the money line. So seeing minus 144 or less, willing to go money line, not run line, to go along with the over. And we wrap things up with my DK Network right of 929, 930 on the card. It is the Walker Texas Rangers playing host to the Chicago Cubs. The Professor, Kyle Hendricks, goes for the Cubs. Cody Bradford is on the bump for Texas, and Texas is back to being a favorite of between minus 120 to minus 130, plus 105 to plus 118 is your number on Chicago. 9 is a total. Over is between minus 105 to minus 120. The under anywhere between even money and minus 115. Right up here is on the total over. Even at a 9.5, I'd be willing to ride with the over. Now, Cody Bradford, I believe, was a little bit better than what the ERA would indicate last year. He had a 5.30 ERA. Fielding independent was more around about a 4.6 or so, but I did take a look at Cody Bradford. In his starts, he was just awful. In his starting role as a starter in 8 total starts, he had a 6.95 ERA. On the bullpen, that actually went down to a sub-3 ERA, but for Cody Bradford, he just gives up a little bit too much hard contact in general. He gave up about 1.8 home runs per 9 innings. Actually only gave up about 2 walks per 9 innings, and it feels like he's going to be a little bit of a pitcher contact guy throughout his career unless if he can get a little bit more velocity. Meanwhile, for the Professor Kyle Hendricks, you know that the ball is going to be in play against him. 6.1 strikeouts per 9 innings last year. Now, command is great, about 1.6, 1.7 walks per 9 innings, but felt like he got a little bit of good fortune on balls in play last season, and now you have to go up against the Texas Rangers team that they had a 304 on balls in play last year. That was number 4 in all baseball, and they led the league in terms of runs per game at home with 5.85. They led the American League in terms of home runs per game, and they just have such a fearsome lineup that I think is going to be able to take it to Mr. Professor Kyle Hendricks as you just take a look up and down the boulevard, and pretty much I think that you had 8 different guys be able to supply at least 14 home runs for the team last year. We all know what you're going to be able to get out of Marcus Semien, Adolis Garcia, along with Corey Seager. These guys all had at least 29 home runs. Garcia already has a home run to his name, and I mean, Travis Jankowski, who had 1 home run last season, he came up with a big home run for the team in the opening day game as well, something that you do love to see. They've got some of the best hitting catchers that you're going to find in all of baseball. And for the Rangers, even though they did really bulk up in terms of their bullpen pitching, they were able to bring in the offseason David Roberts, along with Kirby Yates. It is still a bullpen that last year they were in the big leagues 24th in terms of ERA. Still have my question marks there. I do like what Jose Leclerc is able to bring to the table as well, but when you do get into some of those middle guys, and I think that you're going to be seeing quite a bit of the bullpen here, like Josh Jabours, Yuri Rodriguez, guys like this. That's not a place where you want to be. And for the Chicago Cubs, they were middle of the road in terms of their bullpen ERA last season. You had Jose Cuas have a really nice run towards the middle part of the season, but in the back half, he failed. Edbert Alzolay has been trying to become the closer for the team, and he's been able to do a relatively solid job, but it's still a little bit touch and go. Julian Merriweather was one of the more fortunate pitchers on balls in play in games played away from home a season ago as well, and now you pick up Hector Neris, who can be a little bit of a roll of the dice, but with the Cubs, this team was number 6 in the big leagues with regards to runs per game last season. I really like the way that these guys do a nice job of being able to move the line, because they're an okay home run hitting team. They're not an amazing home run hitting team, team. You've got Cody Bellinger, who gave you the 25 plus home runs last season, and you've got so many guys like a Dansby Swanson, who's able to give you a good amount of power. It's not an amazing amount of power, but he does a good job finding a way on base. Ian Happ, C.A. Suzuki, they're very much cut from the same cloth in that fold as well. Got a guy in Garrett Cooper who I've always liked his game. He hasn't necessarily been able to put it together at the big league level, but you've got guys like Nick Madrigal and company that give you someone that's able to get on base. This is a Cubs team that's one of the best teams in all baseball at being able to reach base, going up against a guy in Cody Bradford, who I've got my question marks there. I think that runs should be very, very plentiful. You've got a few injuries on both sides that you're dealing with, especially with the Rangers dealing with a bunch of starters being out of the fold, and that's why you've got Mr. Bradford out there. But with the Texas Rangers, I do think that they're going to be able to slug their way to victory in this one. I did set them at a minus 127 on the money line. I'm going to be willing to lay it, but right up here is on this total, set mine at a 9.7, so taking the 9 over, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets over on youtube.com/Rob Donaldson. If you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Juden_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season. That means I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.